It's a new year and a new chance for you to make a fresh start with your compliance. For it, we're going to be bringing you a daily tip, strategy, or idea that you can use to improve your program. Here's your host, Tom Fox, the Compliance Evangelist.
Day 29, Post-Acquisition Integration Plan. Your company has just made its largest acquisition ever, and your CEO says that you have to complete a compliance post-acquisition integration plan on their desk in 1 week. Where do you begin? Well, a good place to start is the 2020 FCPA Resource Guide language, which says, pre-acquisition due diligence, however, is normally only a portion of the compliance process for mergers and acquisitions. DOJ and SEC evaluate whether the acquiring company has promptly incorporated the acquired company into all of its internal controls, including its compliance program. Companies should consider training new employees, reevaluating third parties under company standards, and where appropriate, conducting audits on new business units. In a July 2018 speech, former Deputy Assistant Attorney General Matthew Miner announced the DOJ would amend the FCPA corporate enforcement policy to apply the principles contained in it to successor companies that discover potential violations subsequent to an acquisition, as well as to the acquirers who detect potential corrupt activities during the due diligence process. Miner said the DOJ would apply these principles contained in the FCPA corporate enforcement policy to acquiring companies that uncover potential FCPA violations in the mergers and acquisition context. This means if you meet the four requirements under the FCPA corporate enforcement policy, the default DOJ position would be a declination, which would be granted. So what should you perform in the post-acquisition phase? It revolves around integrating the new company into your compliance program, performing an FCPA audit to determine if there are any outstanding issues, remediating both new issues and those identified in the pre-acquisition phase, and reporting any findings of violations to the Department of Justice. In the 2020 update, it stated the process for connecting due diligence implementation and asked the following questions. What has been the company's process for tracking and remediating misconduct or misconduct risk identified during the due diligence process? What has been the company's process for implementing compliance policies and procedures and conducting post-acquisition audits at the newly acquired entities? So the timing-wise, the opinion release 0802 provided the company's FCPA audit would conclude within 180 days of closing, and the company would implement compliance training immediately upon closing and would complete said training within 90 days. The Johnson & Johnson FCPA resolution, the company said it would agree to completing the FCPA audit within 18 months and implementing FCPA compliance training in 12 months under the Data Solutions LLC. That's Data Systems and Solution LLC FCPA resolution. It said the audit and training was to be completed as soon as practicable. As no guidance from the DOJ has specified what it expects in the specific investigation, integration, or training, many compliance professionals struggle with how to perform these post-acquisition integrations. I would like to suggest a integration plan based upon a Harvard Business Review article, Two Routes to Resilience, by authors Clark Gilbert, Matthew Irving, and Richard Foster, who wrote about business transformation, which speaks directly to the compliance practitioner to help create a post-acquisition integration game plan. The authors review the situation where an entity must transform itself, leading to transformation called establishing a capabilities exchange, where a new organizational process that allows two efforts to share resources without interfering with each other's operations. That sounds exactly like a merger to me. That is what the compliance practitioner must accomplish through a post-acquisition integration in the compliance context. Anyone who has gone through a large merger or acquisitions knows how terrifying it can be for the individual employee. Many people, particularly at the target or acquired company, will fear losing their jobs. Yet those fears can be equal in the acquiring company as well. These fears, whether misplaced or well-founded, can often lead to difficulties in the integration process. Consider the creation of a compliance capabilities exchange which allows the two organizations to live together and share strengths, and will coordinate the transformational efforts so that each gets what it needs and is protected by unwarranted interference from the other. There are 5 steps in this process. Number 1, establish compliance leadership. Number 2, identify the compliance resources the two organizations need to share. Number 3, think or create compliance capability exchange teams. Number 4, protect boundaries. Number 5, scale up and promote the new compliance program. The earlier you can deploy these steps, the better off your company will be at the end of the day. An acquisition that fails for compliance reasons is a preventable disaster of the first order. One need only consider the Latin Node FCPA enforcement action where the acquiring company had to write off its entire investment. So what are today's 3 key takeaways? Number 1, planning is critical in the post-acquisition phase. Number 2, build upon what you learned in the pre-acquisition phase. And finally, number 3, you literally need to hit the ground running when a transaction closes, because remember that the clock is ticking, whether it's the 180 days or whether it's as soon as practicable. If you don't hit the ground running and demonstrate to the DOJ that you're serious about post-acquisition, integration, FCPA audit, and training, you will be severely compromised going forward. This is Tom Fox again. Thank you for listening to this episode of 31 Days to a More Effective Compliance Program. I hope you will join me for the entire month of January, where I take a look at some of the significant changes in compliance and FCPA enforcement which occurred in 2020 and will help inform your compliance program going forward into 2021 and indeed beyond.